Hello and welcome back to another episode of Blurble Reasoning. So soon after the last one. Christian, don't you take like 9 years to read books? Not if they're young adult fiction, because as I have realised once more, those books are shorter with larger font and very wide margins. In recent years, I've mostly concerned myself with great big long fat tiny text fantasy books, which take me an age and a half to get through, so I thought I would reward myself with a quick revisit, and we will go through my contextual stuff about what I have and have not read within this series, but revisit Alex Rider. So for those of you that don't know, why would you know? Nobody should know this. If you know this, you're a stalker. As a book-loving kid who grew up during the 2000s, I was, of course, gifted Stormbreaker not once, not twice. Actually, it was twice. I gifted myself the third copy. I have 3 copies of this book, because I've only ever owned books 1, 4, 5, and 6. Maybe 7, but I think that's it. And I saw the box set was on sale for like £10 or something, and this was like years ago, and I picked it up, and I was like, I'm going to do a full read-through of this series, because I started with Eagle Strike. This is mostly because I was a kid and it was my parents' decision. I didn't know about chronology yet. And then we went back for Stormbreaker, and I read Scorpia, and I read Archangel, but I've always been a little bit curious about what happened in books 2 and 3, and then the end of the series. This is going to be a general rule on my channel. If I'm reading young adult fiction, it's probably because I've read some of the series before and have always been curious about how it ended. Either that, or they're just insanely popular young adult books that passed me by, and I've been curious about them for those reasons. Now that we've firmly established that I only read books that I'm interested in reading, what even is this intro? Let's get on with talking about Stormbreaker. Firstly, I should mention this is, of course, in the spy genre. I'm not really a big spy guy. I've never really watched the James Bond movies, never really watched Mission Impossible, never really read anything in the genre. The closest I've ever gotten has been Alex Rider, but it's not because I dislike it or anything, it's just, you know, not the flavour I would choose at the ice cream shop. That being said, having loaded so much fantasy fiction into my brain over the last few years, it is actually quite a nice change of pace to just have somewhere that's set in a real world, although some of this story might have been more fantastical than some of the stories I've been reading in which people can wield magic. I am exaggerating, it's not that bad, but one of the main reasons I wanted to go back and read through the Alex Rider books again, / read the ones I haven't read yet, is because when you are a teenager, reading about a reluctant teenage spy, is of course all fun and games, and you're like, yeah, that sounds crazy. He's an action hero, but he's just like me, I could do that. But when you're an adult, you kind of look back and you go, teenagers couldn't do that. I mean, Anthony Horowitz takes pains to tell us right at the start of the story that Alex Rider is a very fit human being. He is quite big for his age. He has apparently the body of an athlete, and of course his uncle Ian Rider has kind of been stealthily training him up to be a spy his entire life, so he knows different languages, he's super smart, he's well built because of the exercises he's been doing, he knows how to drive, so he does have a bit of a head start in that respect. And you know, he's 14, it's not like he's 11 or 12, but there's a couple things in this book that I raised my eyebrows at, not gonna lie. I should mention, I keep forgetting to mention in these Blurble Reasoning videos, they are full spoiler reviews, so we will be getting into spoilers. The first thing that I noticed was when Alex Rider goes to the car crushing yard and just happens to find his uncle's car moments before it's about to get crushed in the car crusher, and he barely escapes. He's described as being bruised, scraped, his school uniform is in tatters, and he goes home to apparently no questions. The housekeeper he lives with, whose name Jackie or Jack? It's just Jack, isn't it? She apparently doesn't notice or ask any questions, and the next day he's just in school in his school uniform. I assume he had a spare. No one's apparently asking about his injuries. Not something I noticed as a kid. And yeah, this might be like it might not be an oversight, it might actually be a decision of like, I don't know, in the young adult genre, maybe you don't want to get too bogged down with details and explaining away how you can go and do things without your parents noticing. I'm sure that's not the most thrilling thing to read. I know I said parents, I know Jack isn't his parent. But yeah, as a result reading this, I was like, okay, sure. There was also the fact that after Alex got found out as being up to no good, clearly being a secret agent, within the compound towards, I would say, 3/4 of the way through the book on his mission. The wise thing to do would be to simply kill him in his sleep, right? He's powerless. It would be simple, just, shoot him while he's in bed or lethal injection him before he has a chance to wake up, that kind of thing. But no, they wait till the middle of the day and then they send out 2 guys on quad bikes with cheese wire to cut him in half. They also have a flamethrower and they do also have a gun, but it's hard to aim on the back of a quad bike. Go figure. Now, I don't know how much of this is Anthony Horowitz. I don't know how much of this is the spy genre having to make things exciting. I don't know how much of this is young adult fiction, but yeah. A lot of this is stretching disbelief, of course. And by the way, before I get too far into talking about these are nitpicks of I found this kind of funny. It didn't ruin the reading experience for me. I still had a pretty good time with this book, but I can't help but sit here reading it going, men on quad bikes with a cheese wire? Really? That's your go-to method of assassination? Okay then. My last nitpick in terms of believability is when Alex Rider literally shoots the Prime Minister and Mrs. Jones manages to tell the security team to stand down and not shoot. But I don't know that she would have had time to do that, or that everyone on the security team would have listened when he is literally shooting the Prime Minister. But yeah, it's a little pulpy, of course, but it's fun, and I wanted something that was easy and fun. And I think the way I'm poking fun at this book right now is largely because I've spent so much time in books where action and consequence are grounded in reality despite being in realms of magic, etc. But no, the idea of this, it's a little stereotypical, right? It's not pushing the envelope, although this book is sold as Anthony Horowitz reinvented the spy genre, so I don't know what came before it. But there's an evil multi-millionaire, and he is he is providing a beneficial gift to the country, which is a massive weapon, biological weapon in disguise. It's a little on the nose. Now, something I like to do with books is I like to look at the year that they were written, and because I feel like that's very important with books, especially in science fiction, which this isn't, but still. This book is set in the real world, so I was it probably makes sense to look up when this book was first written. It was written in the year 2000 originally, or that was when it was first published at least. And this is very much a book of its time, because when you think about it, the plot is this tech multimillionaire who is gifting computer systems to all the schools in the UK. This would have been back in a time when not every school in the UK would have had a computer room for kids to go and do BBC Bite Size on. The Stormbreakers are described as being sleek with an innovative black design and a Stormbolt down the front. And I'm just looking at my gaming PC that was sleek and innovative in 2000. Okay. I was a little confused as to how they could fit the cartridge of Smallpox into the screen, and then I remembered the screens back then were nice big chunky CRT things. Actually, I don't know if monitors were CRTs. I don't actually know that for a fact. They looked like CRT television sets, but there's a difference, right? Anyway, I grew up in this era, so I should know that. But my main thing that I found humorous or interesting was the fact that Alex Rider had a Nintendo DS as his gadget. What would a typical teenager carry in his bag? We know a DS will send him away with that, and the different cartridges can do different things. I always thought that was pretty cool. But here's the thing, this book came out in 2000, and the Nintendo DS didn't come out till 2005, so clearly this updated edition I'm reading, they were we should probably update it for a modern audience and make it a Nintendo DS. I will say, and I remember this a bit from Eagle Strike as well, the way Anthony Horowitz writes about technology kind of smacks of being from the viewpoint of someone who did a lot of research but doesn't really know how to talk about technology. That might be mean, but the DS is frequently referred to as the Nintendo, and when they're talking about it, they're the computer will do this, and it's technically correct, but it's also not how people talk about these things. When Alex is asked to, critique the Stormbreaker, to tell Herod Sale what he thinks about it, he says, it was great, but, have you considered 3D acceleration? And Herod Sale's yes, but it's not really made for gaming. Well, he doesn't say gaming, he says for computer games. I was just thinking, is that something Alex Rider would ask? if he's considered 3D acceleration. No, you would say, have you considered... Oh, I don't know, man. I don't know. Just little things like that. I suppose he was trying to emulate a geek, a nerd. He was supposed to be Felix, whoever. Something I really do appreciate about this book, by the way, is how Alex Rider isn't particularly great at his job. He gets the job done, but with lots of mistakes on the way, to really kind of like drive home the fact that he is new to this. He immediately gives his real name instead of his fake name. He's very quickly caught trying to see through the door with his DS on the cameras. He's only there for like 2 days, and I think his cover was blown almost immediately. He gives away that he knows more about Herod Sale's past than he should, and of course he barely saves the day in the nick of time, which is what all action heroes do, but he does it very clumsily. I do like the line from Alan Blunt, "You slightly spoiled things by shooting the Prime Minister." I will say, something I feel a lot more keenly as an adult that I didn't really think about as a kid is just how ethically fucked it is that they're sending this teenager in to do this mission where one of their fully trained adult agents was killed. I really appreciate the scene we have with Alan Blunt and Mrs. Jones where he's talking extremely pragmatically, where he's saying he's not really expecting Alex Rider to survive, but if he gets shot and killed on sight, it will be very helpful for them to have reason to go and investigate and stop whatever's happening. It's the kind of cold-blooded pragmatism that's really fun with what I've seen very little of this genre. This constant conflict of like, what do we have to do to beat the bad guys? Who do we have to be? How brutal do we have to be? And of course, it's also a little realistic that they wouldn't send in a 14-year-old expecting him to succeed. And it's only when he succeeds that they realize that they can use him for future missions. I also am a little startled at how unjust it is that they don't even say they're gonna pay him for what he's done. He just had to do that and risk his life and not even be expected to survive as a favor to the country and the government. I think there's a line that says something along the lines of like, in real life, agents aren't highly paid like patriots, they're just used. Now, something that's always kind of not bothered me, but I've always noticed about Anthony Horowitz's style, at least within the Alex Rider series, is that we don't get a lot of emotions from people. The writing is descriptive, it paints a picture of a world very well, but it's also quite simplistic in a lot of ways. And again, this is probably just an element of this is young adult fiction, it's not going to explore deeper themes of trauma. I just want to jump in real quick and say that actually some young adult fiction does explore themes of trauma, but I guess just not this one. But I do find it slightly unrealistic that Alex Rider would go through all this without feeling, it's mentioned that he feels afraid at times or stressed out, but by the end of this book, that he's not just like a shivering wreck. This teenage boy is made of sterner stuff than most real people fully grown. I do wonder if that will be explored later in books when he's got more missions under his belt. Will he start having elements of PTSD, etc.? But for the moment, I'm kind of assuming from what I have read and from what I remember, not really. I know things get interesting around Scorpio/Archangel in terms of how he feels about certain things, but yeah, I'm looking forward to getting there and seeing if he feels a little bit more fleshed out emotionally by then. That being said, I initially was going to read through the entire series, but I'm currently reading 3 books concurrently right now. I'm reading through Elantris, after which I will return to Lord of the Rings. I'm also reading through The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb, part of a Live Ship Traders trilogy. Really enjoying that. And this now, with Alex Rider, was the third avenue of the third lane, I guess, I opened up to read books. Probably not wise to be reading too many books at the same time, because I will never finish anything, but I think I just needed that break from fantasy. Not that I'm having a bad time with it, just that it's a lot of the same flavour of ice cream, and I'll probably appreciate it more if I have something a little bit different at the same time. And I was going to keep going with the Alex Rider series. I don't foresee myself staying away from it too long, but my attention, the latest thing that my attention has been caught up by, and the next thing I'm going to read in lane 3, if we're going to think about it that way, is going to be some Isaac Asimov, because I've been wanting to get into sci-fi for a long time and I've barely touched the genre, so I'm going to start reading through Isaac Asimov's stuff, beginning with The Complete Robot, which I think is a bunch of short stories before he really knuckles down and starts writing novels in that universe, which will be fun. I've been very curious about mostly his Foundation series for the longest time, and I've just now found out that it's all kind of in the same universe, even though he didn't originally intend it to be. Although, not to take this conversation completely off the rails, but I have also just checked his Wikipedia page and found out that he also did some pretty not okay shit, which makes me think that if I read his books, his depictions of women aren't going to be the most equal, but I kind of feel like I'm missing out on like a giant chunk of important sci-fi fiction. I don't know. I'm torn up about this. You'll know when you see the blurble reasoning whether I actually went through with it or not. I've always found separating the artist from the art difficult when it comes to straight up books, because they are the one and only, apart from, inputs from their editor, etc. The pretty much 90% of the voice in their fiction. But anyway, that's a topic for another video. So there's that. There's Alex Rider's Stormbreaker. I will get around to reading Point Blank at some point, but truth be told, I don't feel it's too urgent, just because I don't think I'm going to forget the events of this book too quickly, just because it's like my third or fourth read through, and it's a fairly simple chain of events. Thank you for listening. Sorry if it seems like I was being too harsh. I did enjoy this book. I kind of gave it, I don't really do ratings, but on my spreadsheet I gave it a 4 out of 5. It was fun to read through it and just rip through a book in a couple of days. And I'll see you in whatever I make next.